Well, good morning, everybody. So we get started today. I just was thinking back over how the heat from the last few days here has really just eaten away at the snowpack in the northern plains. Our first map looks back on the 5th of April. That was just after that large blizzard came out of parts of Wyoming, clipping Nebraska, South Dakota, and then kind of landing here on the Red River Valley of the North before spreading snow into Ontario. And when you look back at the snow water equivalent map at that time, it's just extensive. And in fact, one of the most extensive snowpacks for this point in April, looking back in history. Now, that's not to say that we're not still paying attention to the incredible amount of snow that's still in the Sierra Nevada or in the upper Colorado Basin, where there's still 150% of normal snowpack in the upper Colorado Basin, and some places in the Sierra still have over 100 inches of liquid in the snow as it begins to melt. But I was just watching the transition here in the northern plains. When you just add a week onto this, all right, this is what the latest snow water equivalent map looks like. And there's been a lot of melt that's happened. What I'm concerned about here is that the atmosphere is about to throw the brakes on the melting. And unfortunately, some wetter conditions are going to be coming back to parts of the northern plains. And we are concerned about more snow here in and around the Great Lakes, and also snow coming into parts of Montana. Now, south of this, very active planting. I'm in just north of Madison here in the Wisconsin Dells early this morning. And my drive up, I stopped counting by the time I got to LaSalle, Peru, but from Champaign to Bloomington to LaSalle, Peru, I counted 30 tractors and cultivators out. So they were planting and cultivating. It was just amazing. Very dusty, beautiful sunset because of that, but just amazing to see how quickly people were responding to the warmer conditions. So we need to think about what's coming through the Midwest, because this is just where I saw a lot of activity lately. And in terms of precipitation, the temperature with that precipitation, and the risk of frost. We'll get to that in a second. But I just want to show you why it was so dusty. We look back here at the top 4 inches of soil moisture, and we can see, of course, the drought that is firmly anchored in the plains. And we're going to talk more about this in a second. But we have had this drier weather that's helped the topsoil kind of dry back out across these states. And that's prompting a good setup for the seed bed and getting the planting done. But we need to see how this is going to recover as we go forward. On satellite, this was just as the sun was rising this morning. Let me take you back to yesterday, as there was a lot of things going on. First of all, the circulation down here in the tropics caught a lot of us. Many of us kind of looked at that and wondered if it had tropical kind of nature to it here in the Gulf of Mexico. But one thing was for sure, the stalled out frontal boundary that initiated this stalled out over parts of southern Florida. And last night, just take a look at this. There were some places, let's shrink that up, there we go, down here in Florida, right around Fort Lauderdale, that picked up 20 inches of rainfall. So this is just looking back at the last 3 days of precip, and most of this just fell yesterday. All right, other things to take note of here. As I kind of play through the day, you can see all of this is smoke from wildfires. Some of them are controlled burns, and there's a big one here in parts of Wisconsin. Just amazing to see that smoke kind of coming up there. But we're watching this next system that's coming out of Montana today. It's going to open up this broad pressure trough that will extend from Colorado to the Great Lakes, and through that we're going to watch for a multi-day system to roll through the middle part of the country. While that's all occurring, this low is going to move through parts of the south and eventually head over to the mid-Atlantic later on this week as well. So this morning, where does everything sit? There's just as the sun was rising. We can see this system now continue to produce some very heavy rain here as we're about to watch snow here in parts of Montana. So our all hazards weather map reflects that. We've got the tornado watch down here in parts of Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. All the way from Arizona to New Mexico, clear to lower Michigan, we have red flag warnings on strong winds and very dry conditions. We're still watching the snow melt across the north, and we see the winter storm warnings on the backside. Now, I want to tell you there's a pretty sizable temperature transition that will be occurring here, and we can already see the effects of that here along coastal California and Oregon up to the Willamette Valley, where there are frost advisories and freeze warnings in place. And here's what the winds are going to be looking like later today. So you can see the depth of this trough coming in the west. We're starting to watch the first piece of this eject here with a low. Here's the second one, but tucked in behind all of this, there is still higher pressure that's kind of pushing this very hot and quite dry air pretty far to the north. And we've got another day and a half or 2 days of this coming through parts of the Central Plains, and then a little bit longer here in the Midwest and off to the east. Now, with the setup of these next few systems, we're going to be keeping an eye out today for severe storms here. We're going to watch the high plains later on tonight, and then tomorrow moving into the Central Plains with severe weather risk, maybe over the Carolinas, some stronger storms. And then as we get into the day on Saturday, we're going to just keep an eye on the southern tail of this for the risk of those strong to severe storms as well. On the snowy side of it, this is where we've got the heaviest snow coming out from the first round. It's going to be coming into parts of Montana. You're looking at a map that shows the probability of getting at least 4 inches of snow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this probability map over to more of a national view here, and I'm going to show you the chances of getting at least 3 inches of snow through the weekend into early next week. And while we're pretty confident in what we're expecting to see here coming out of parts of Montana, extending down here into the Colorado Rockies, so this corridor, and then what will be coming into Ontario, the snow that could be in parts of Minnesota, I can't rule out Iowa, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, and actually lower Michigan as well. This area, I'll be honest with you, we're going to have to wait until this next cyclone fully takes shape to know if and when the snow is going to fall here. It's going to be a nowcasting scenario, and we're just going to have to watch it carefully. But we look over the next 7 days, and what I would like to point out is that while we do keep a corridor more open and drier, I'm talking about from the Texas, the southern plains, through parts of the Midwest, where as the storms come through, yes, they're going to be dropping some rain, but it's not the kind of rain that just completely eliminates, 5 to 7 days of field work in here. What I am concerned about is what's falling on the backside of this and the storm system that will be coming through here in the following week. So let's go have a look at all of these. When we look at the upper level pattern, this is the ridge that brought in the warmth. Here's the low that's cut underneath it, and here's the next trough we're going to be keeping an eye on. As we play this forward going through the end of this week, we're just going to see this pattern sweep a deeper trough this weekend that's going to ride up here and eventually set up right over the Great Lakes. Let's see if this will catch up here. Sorry, I have limited bandwidth this morning. Now, after that trough goes through, thankfully it doesn't look like it's going to close off and sit here and spin. We're just going to see the pattern do it again. Deep troughs in the west, ridges open up in the central United States, so there's some warmth that comes with this, but these systems are just going to keep progressing through the country as we go forward. So let's go look at our multi-model analysis. This is the GFS on the left, European on the right. So playing this forward, here's by this afternoon to this evening the heavy snows that are coming into parts of Montana. Here's the low that's underneath that big ridge that's going to be spreading scattered storms. Some of them could be severe down here today and tonight. So playing through the overnight hours tonight, getting out into Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and Friday evening. There's the pressure trough that opens up I mentioned. So there's a front in through here. And then we're going to watch Friday evening for the risk of severe storms stretching right in through this corridor. Now, as this kind of continues, we're going to watch that second low kind of move out through the day on Saturday. And that'll be the day when we're watching for the strongest severe storms through parts of the Mid-South right in through here. Now, there is some colder air on the back side of this, which means some of this sweeping through Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois will be a pretty good shot at some colder air. And the GFS is the most aggressive on trying to bring snow in on the backside of this. This is, again, Saturday night getting into Sunday morning right here, Sunday midday. And you notice that the GFS wants to just really bring in a chance for some snow into parts of Minnesota and Iowa. It's not quite as pronounced in the European model, so I told you we're just going to have to nowcast through this. I could explain it away 1,000 different times and come up with a different solution. The reality is it's an April setup for potential for snow, and it's very difficult to forecast. So this is by a Sunday evening, and then getting into Monday morning, we're going to watch this low kind of curl up over parts of the Great Lakes, Ontario and Quebec, and there is the risk of some snow coming in around the backside of this in and around the Great Lakes. Now what we see is another ridge opens and the temperatures rebound, but there's another system kind of waiting in the wings, and that one comes into the northwest, and as you can imagine, just keep your eye over here, it's going to eject into the plains and kind of set us up with another system. Now there's two things with this. The moisture, we need it, okay? I know that it slows us down with some field work, but we have to get moisture in spring, and I know we all know this. But the problem is that this might be tapping into a little bit more cooler air by next Friday, so we're going to be concerned about what that might mean in terms of just not giving this newly planted crop the best go of it, and if this does hit this region, this is going to be rain on top of what's left of that snow. Okay, what about week 2? Well, we keep mentioning that the models keep over-promising precipitation in the southern plains where there's drought. And once again, we kind of see that setting up again. Yesterday, they were calling for it. Now they're not. With troughs that keep coming into the west, though, and then running up through the northern plains, we see this area showing up wetter. We also see the risk of being wetter here in the northern plains. but drier compared to average across a broader corridor, kind of where I just drew those last two arrows. That seems to be a consistent theme in the models. What I want to show you is, as we get out there longer term, I'm looking for anything that either breaks this spring over into full-on warmth or gives us major risk of cold. And this is somewhere in the middle, to be honest with you. We're going to watch by the end of April the jet stream to try to extend out into the Pacific, but it's kind of broken up into two branches. And what I don't see here is any sort of high amplitude, try that again. I don't see any high amplitude features across North America. Sorry about that. And what I'm saying here is that the pattern's open and flowing, but this means we're going to have kind of regular change. You know what I'm saying? Like so the moisture will come in, will be followed by a shot of some cooler air, and then it builds back up with warmth, and then it goes. So there's nothing blocking this pattern up, in my opinion, going out here toward the end of April. All right. In tonight's in-depth report, we'll go well beyond this, go into May, and take a look at some of these other stresses. Now, I'd like to show you temperature, I think 5 different ways today. There's 5 different kind of stories here with the temperature, and then we'll wrap this video up. First of all, here's today's projected highs. Already massive swing in temperatures in parts of Montana and throughout the west, and now look at the northern plains. But you just slide right in through here, huge temperature gradient, and this is where we go from Thursday into Friday. From Friday into Saturday, you can now see the colder air coming in behind that rain, which means the rain that'll be sitting in the soil here from the event on Saturday will then be followed by much cooler temperatures. And we're just concerned about this newly planted crop and what that might mean, just cooling things down temporarily. So then we play through Monday, see the warm-up already happening behind it. All right, that's the next surge of some warmth, but the pattern just kind of keeps open and keeps moving. So we're going to see another shot at some cooler air behind this. Now, how many GDDs are we expecting to accumulate over the next 7 days? Here's the latest numbers. So pause the video and have a close look at that. This is a 7-day forecast from today going forward. And don't forget, we've got lots of tools to calculate and monitor GDDs on agwx.com. So take a look at that. And this will be the trickiest thing, I think, to forecast going forward, is what will the extent of the frost look like? Now, currently, over the next 7 days, we'll clip parts of the plains, Iowa, northern Illinois, possibly northern Indiana. I've been concerned that we can get that frost farther to the south in this area, but the models aren't necessarily going after that. Let me show you that first. Here we go. We'll come back to that previous map. So this is Sunday morning's lows. So what you see here is that line represents our frost line. This goes into Monday morning lows. So this is our frost line on Monday morning according to the European model. And here's Tuesday morning lows. Now we'll get temperatures in the upper 30s here. But right now it seems as though we're going to keep that frost line relatively farther to the north. But I do want you to know that we are monitoring the soil temperatures quite carefully. So we see, of course, bare soil really cranking up in temperatures by today. Then as we go into the day on Friday, there's the peaks going into the day on Saturday. Now we're going to watch a transition, right? The cold air is coming in on Saturday. So this is by Sunday morning. So now we notice those 4-inch soil temps back in the 40s in Iowa. Then getting into Monday morning. Let's get it there one more step. And now we've got widespread kind of 40s, maybe even some 30s here in Wisconsin, Iowa, southern Michigan. And there's going to be some wet conditions with this. So that's just a concern I have about the newly planted crop. But as we talked about, there'll be a resurgence of warmth coming back, into next week. So we see the next system kind of pulling that warmth back in. Here's the 5th way we're going to look at it. Just broad scale temperature pattern over the next 15 days. So you're going to notice that in this particular setup, we keep cooler weather anchored north and west. We see the central plains hanging on to warmer weather the longest, but it's just kind of an open and flowing pattern like this, which is why we just continue to see a repeat of the temperature fluctuations we just forecast. Last couple of things here, just international weather. There is a large tropical cyclone, of course, spinning in the opposite direction because this is the coast of Australia. And this one may have winds up to I think it was up to a Category 3 in strength at one point. It's named Isla, and it is moving toward Australia. And the potential is it's going to swipe through the middle part of Australia, which is mostly desert, but we need to keep an eye out for what this could do in terms of rainfall impacting the planting of their fall and winter crops. And finally, just the main story in South America is near normal rains in Mato Grosso, heavy rains in central Brazil, or drier along the Paraná Basin. That's been a constant theme here in the forecast. And this is going to push the safrinha crop, but it's going to continue to cause issues in Argentina. So I'll stop here. Thank you for your extra time today, and we'll talk again tomorrow morning. Actually, we'll do the in-depth report tonight, so I'll talk to some of you tonight. Thanks.